When you sit down to read Spanish, you're good. Everything is easy and you understand just about everything. But when you're trying to understand or speak in a real conversation, it's like it's not even the same language. You may have trouble comprehending and formulating your own sentences. Today, I'll help you understand why that happens and just 2 simple changes that you can make in your Spanish study routine starting today to fix that problem. It doesn't matter what you've tried before. Our student Pam had tried just about everything.
I have tried to learn Spanish for a number of years, and I have used all of the methods, the language apps. I've attended online classes, I've done one-on-one classes, and honestly, my Spanish did not progress beyond being able to understand beyond reading. I seem to do pretty well with reading, but my listening, my ear, and speaking the language was lacking. My family speaks Spanish, my husband's family. My mother-in-law is from Guatemala, so his whole family speaks Spanish and English, but when they dive into some conversations in Spanish, then, I get left out. So I didn't even want to say hello to anybody because I was afraid it was going to develop into this conversation I couldn't do, but my confidence has definitely gotten a lot better.
But now she's more confident in conversation with her Spanish-speaking family and community members. I'm going to show you how to get that same result. Comencemos, amigos. If you're new to me, te doy una gran bienvenida. Soy Erika. I'm a former Spanish medical interpreter turned Spanish teacher and language coach, now living and loving life abroad here in Mexico. I have Spanish learners who are learning for the purpose of relocation or communication with their family and community members. And it all starts with a rock solid Spanish study routine. So if you don't want to waste any time piecing things together and you want the A to Z plan laid out for you, then you want to check out my workshop, the Next 90 Days Spanish Workshop. The link is in the description. So let's talk about why you can read Spanish but not understand or speak it very well, why many apps, books, and classes are failing to help you bridge that gap, and what you can do about it. So why can you read Spanish but not speak or understand it very well? Well, understanding written Spanish as an English speaker is honestly not too difficult. We have a lot of cognates, about 20,000 of them. Those are words that look very similar both in English and Spanish because they come from the same roots. So when you see a word like hospital, ideal, material, you recognize it almost instantly. But when you just hear it, it doesn't sound the same. So even though your eyes recognize the words, your ear may not. That's one reason why it feels like reading is easier, but listening is harder. Because it is. So what about reading versus speaking? Well, reading is passive and speaking is active. When you read, you're recognizing what someone else has already produced, and not just the words that we're talking about, but even the grammatical patterns, how sentences are put together. You don't need to understand all of the words, you just have to understand the overall context to be able to put meaning to it. So you can piece together the understanding, even when there are gaps. Speaking though, that's active output. So that's not just about recognizing the words, it's about retrieving them and putting them together on the fly, and that takes practice. So we've established that reading is definitely easier, but why are so many Spanish learners who are doing more than just reading still struggling when it comes time to speak and understand? Well, problem number 1 is that you may be relying too much on text. So you could say, I'm listening, I'm definitely listening. I'm watching Netflix and I'm watching YouTube videos and I'm listening to podcasts, but are you always putting on the subtitles, following along with the transcript? Most Spanish learners are. And when you do that, you're not so much practicing your listening skills in that moment. Even though you may think you are, you're really just fortifying your reading even more. When there's 2 types of input coming in, reading and listening, our brain is automatically going to default to whatever is easier. And as we've just established, it's a lot easier to read the Spanish than it is to understand it with audio alone, or even with audio and visuals alone. And I understand, my Netflix is defaulted to have subtitles on, whether the movie is in English or Spanish or whatever it is. It's just more comfortable to have the subtitles on. That way I can still follow along no matter how much noise my kids are making or what's going on. I can just read what's on the screen and there's no chance of missing anything. It's comfortable. I know it's more comfortable that way. But when you are learning Spanish, You have to earn that right. So I'm not saying that you can never use subtitles, but you have to take some time in your routine to just listen. If you grab a copy of my free Spanish study plan, the Spanish Fluency Blueprint, you'll see that the first step of whatever material that you're working with is to just listen to that material. Later, we're gonna bring in the text and we're gonna break it down, and we're gonna do all the things that you probably are tempted to do from the beginning. But first, you have to just listen. There are no shortcuts to real world comprehension. And when you're speaking to someone in a conversation, you don't have the luxury of having subtitles coming out of their mouth. Trust me, I would love it if that were the case, but it's just not. Not yet anyway. If you would like all of the steps of the study plan broken down for you, you can grab your free copy at ericaraylanguage.com/blueprint. Problem number 2 is that many Spanish tools, like apps and also many classes, focus on grammar knowledge and vocabulary memorization, breaking the language down, putting the grammar and the vocabulary in sentences so that you learn how to work with the language, which is very useful, but they don't focus so much on the listening and speaking aspects, which are ultimately what you're wanting to do.
And honestly, a lot of the frustration also came with my online classes because we would just be stuck in a rotation of learning conjugations and verbs. And at the rate that I was learning verbs, I'll be 100 years old by the time I learned Spanish. I can't just learn conjugation.
And the reason that they focus on these things is because grammar and vocabulary are a lot easier to measure. You can get a ding with the correct answer. You can easily test your knowledge on how many words you remember and fill in the blanks. Any app can help you self-correct that, and classes can give you tests and see how well you do on the test when they're testing your grammar and vocabulary specifically. It's also very easy to test your reading comprehension. But again, we're wanting to go beyond reading. So those tools or the very structured classes often do not see or frankly don't care about where you're getting stuck in your understanding and your speaking. And many teachers simply follow a curriculum, building in a quote unquote logical order, helping you learn words, helping you learn grammar, congratulating you because you can put your sentences together. But there is still very little focus on comprehension in real time and speaking. So what is the solution? More speaking practice. You've got to be practicing in conversations because in conversations, you're working on your listening as well as your speaking.
My biggest improvement has been my listening skills. My husband likes to listen to, or not listen, but likes to watch telenovelas or other programming in Spanish. And I'd always have to have captions on, and I'm finding that my ear is a lot more in tune, and that's good. So I've gone from being able to understand with reading to a lot better with my listening and also with my speaking.
Now, what type of conversational practice do you need? Because problem number 3 is that many learners are practicing their conversation somewhat, but they're not challenging themselves enough. So many learners are having conversations with their teachers, for example, back and forth conversations, but these are very controlled. And then when they get into the real world, they find it difficult to understand just the regular pace of native speakers. And many who are working with just one teacher and that's their only source of controlled speaking practice tell me that they have gotten so used to how that person speaks that it's pretty easy for them to understand their teacher and no one else. There are even some really cool AI tools now where you can have a conversation with the robot about anything that you want. You can say something, they'll say something back, you say something back. These are great tools for additional practice, but there are a couple of issues. One, you are again reading, you're speaking, and the little app is voice recognizing what you're saying and writing it for you, and then you're reading what the robot says back to you. And so again, you're defaulting to relying on reading instead of actually understanding and speaking. So you've got to be challenging yourself when you're practicing with a tool or when you're practicing your conversation by means of writing out a conversation, for example. These are excellent to prepare or reinforce, but there's really no pressure here. There's no healthy pressure. You can pause, take your time, There's no fear of making a mistake. But when you're speaking with people, there is some healthy pressure there. You learn to think on your feet and adapt to what's going on, different opinions. And another issue is that these conversations are always going to be very neat. Where real human conversations in the real world, they're messy. You're speaking and then your speaking partner interrupts, and someone else comes and interrupts. You may even interrupt your own thoughts because you were going in one direction, you want to go in another. This is just all natural human speech. Conversations are very human and very messy. And if you don't have any practice with that natural flow of conversation, and even speaking to more than one person at once, knowing when it's your turn to jump in with something, learning natural conversational transitions, what to say to show that you agree with the person or disagree. All of these things, these are harder to acquire when your only speaking practice is you and your teacher. And that's why even when we work with our students one-on-one so that we can help them accomplish their specific speaking goals, we're also encouraging them to attend our group speaking sessions as well. There are 2 parts of the package here, and we have them every single day, multiple times per day, so that you can find sessions that fit your schedule. And so then you get both the controlled practice, focusing on the conversations that you want to bring to fulfillment, because we're meeting you where you are. And no out-of-the-box curriculum can do that. But at the same time, you're experiencing the dynamics of talking to more than one person at once in a group setting on different topics, practicing extracting from your brain things that you've learned, and now it's time to bring into this conversation. Unscripted. So you get to experience all of the natural messiness, the occasional interruption, awkward silences, asking someone to repeat themselves, using phrases like ¿cómo? ¿Qué quieres decir? These are all things that you will use in the real world when you are going to speak to your Spanish-speaking family members, your community members, or the friends that you make abroad. It's not going to be perfect. Now, that being said, you don't have to just throw yourself into every type of speaking situation and just wing it. There are ways to prepare yourself so that you feel more confident. It's a method that I call the Triple P method, and I break it down for you in the masterclass. So be sure to check that out at ericaralanguage.com/90days. And this strategic preparation and variety helps you so much when you're out in the real world speaking to your Spanish-speaking family members or community members abroad, because you're used to a little bit of that messiness. You've been challenging yourself in conversation. Not everything is perfectly neat and scripted. I say this, now you say this, now it's my turn to say this. As you advance, your conversation practice has to become more dynamic and more natural. But for some learners, it just never happens because they stay in their bubble, they stay in their comfort zone, they stay practicing with their apps or their one teacher, and it's so much harder to take those skills into the real world. And the more time you spend conversing in the real world, the faster you're going to improve. Now, we've been picking on some of these tools today because so many learners come to me after having used them for months or even years, very frustrated because they cannot have real conversations with real people, and that's what they signed up for when they started learning Spanish. But at the same time, I'm not saying that those tools are useless. Very structured materials like textbooks, as long as they have audio to go with them, or certain apps, structured group classes, can be very helpful when you're first starting out and getting those basics down your first few months. They help you learn how to build sentences and give you that sense of progress. But language learning does not continue to be linear. It's like a tree. We may have a thick trunk here and it just looks like it's the same, and then it starts branching out. Every individual becomes very different after they have learned the basics. So if your routine is very balanced and you're getting in tons of input, listening and reading, then your vocabulary is going to expand faster than your curriculum can keep up with. So eventually you outgrow this very structured learning and you need more organic speaking and listening practice. More real conversations. I talk about that more in this video here. So to summarize, if you want to go beyond just being able to read Spanish and learn how to understand and speak it well, you must, 1, spend more time listening without text. Incorporate that time spent actively listening without looking at the words every single week, as often as possible. And then incorporate more real human speaking practice. And we've talked about 2 different types of real human practice that it is very helpful to include. Speaking one-on-one with individuals, which tends to be more of a controlled conversation. You are more in control of speaking about the topics that you most want to develop. And then also making sure that you're spending time in groups, so that you can experience the organic nature of conversation, which is so naturally human. If you want help applying any of this, I go into much greater depth in my masterclass. You can find that at ericareelanguage.com/90 days or by clicking on the link in the description. Now, if you're doing pretty good with the reading and the understanding, but you say, oh, I just have so much trouble stringing my sentences together, check out this video next.
This is honestly the only program I've ever done where I feel like it is doable and there's huge results. So I would definitely recommend it to anybody.